good afternoon, good evening. This is Senior Issues, etc. I'm your host, Vita Verdon, and I've got a good show for you tonight. I got a nice-looking man with me here, and you're going to enjoy all the things that he has to say. So hurry up, go get your coffee, your beer, your 7-Up, your Dr. Pepper. Sit down, this one's for you. Now, the guest that I have here tonight is from the Libertyville Fire Department. He's the Assistant Chief of the Fire Department, and he's been with the Fire Department now 28 years. I keep saying he doesn't look that old, and he's got a couple grown children, and his name is Ken Komers, and we want to give him a nice warm welcome. Nice to have you here today, Vita. Ken. And so what we want to know is something about, I know this show goes to a lot of different areas, but this fire department that we are featuring for this show is in Libertyville, Illinois.
Yes, it is.
And so you're going to tell us a little bit about, first of all, yourself and then the fire department. So tell us everything we like to get up close and personal about Ken, okay?
Well, first of all, I've been with Libertyville for 22 years. I've been in the fire service for 28 years
28
altogether.
years,
yeah. I'm married, 2 children. My wife works out of the house in Arlington Heights. I have a 25-year-old daughter who's teaching
But where
English.
were you born?
I was born in Waukegan, right at Victory Hospital.
Oh, were you raised there, or you were raised in Gurnee, right?
Grew up in Gurnee, stayed in Gurnee my entire life until I moved down to Arlington Heights after I got married.
What is your wife's name?
Susan.
And I want you to look right into that camera, and I want you to give her 2 great big kisses, like from here.
Hi, honey.
From the heart.
Okay, and like I said, my wife Susan works out of the house. She has her own business. She's been working out of the house for about 4 or 5 years.
What kind of business?
It's a recruiting business for biotech and pharmaceutical companies. My daughter Marissa, who's 25, graduated from college 2 years ago, and now she's over in the Czech Republic teaching English to
That's
little
so
kids.
interesting.
Yeah, she had one of her friends do it, so she just decided that's what she wanted to do. Packed up her bags, got on a plane in January, and flew over there by herself.
Well, good for her. That's so gutsy.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have done it. And my son Mike, he's graduating from the U of I this May with the highest GPA average for the entire business school for this year. And he's moving out to Denver to work for one of the big 4 accounting firms.
Oh, that's so nice.
I got kids that are go-getters.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. And you had mentioned when we were talking earlier that with the certification your daughter has, she can go to several places all over the world with this teaching license, right?
Yeah, she can teach any place in the country, actually in the world that has this program. She can go to Costa Rica, she can go to South America, just anywhere.
Probably Europe, some places.
Yeah, and we don't, Spain, and we don't know when she's going to come home. So.
That is so interesting. Well, now we'd like to know something about the Libertyville Fire Department.
We're not a real big department. We have 3 fire stations.
About how old is it? Do you have any idea?
I know it's well over 100 years old. I was working there when we had our 100-year anniversary. I just can't recall what year that was.
But it's well over 100. That's close enough.
Well over 100. We have 3 fire stations, 2 in the village itself. Then we have one that's out located across the street from Abbott Park. It's in the fire district. We have 13 guys on shift, and we have 2 daytime personnel, the chief and myself. So, and everybody that works is a paramedic and a firefighter.
I didn't realize that every firefighter is also a paramedic. Is that just for Libertyville, or is that all over?
All over. Up in Lake County, it's principle for every full-time firefighter to be a paramedic also.
Oh, because I wasn't aware of that. Of course, several years ago, I had a fall I live in Libertyville, in my apartment, and I know the fire department came. Yeah. I had broken my femur in 100 pieces and my hip in 2 pieces. I was laying on the floor, and they were paramedics.
Yes.
So I didn't realize that they send specifically when you call for something like that, the paramedic, but all the firefighters are paramedics. Yes. Well, you would have to be.
Yeah, because we don't run, there's not enough fire calls to keep us busy. And most of the calls we run are ambulance calls or EMS calls. And we run about 70% ambulance calls, 30% fire calls.
So. Now, you are the assistant fire chief, right?
Yes, I'm one of them.
How many are
we actually
there?
have 4.
Oh, because of different shifts?
Yeah, we have an assistant fire chief that works, or that we call the shift commander. So he's on duty 24 hours on, then 48 hours off. So then myself, I work Monday through Friday, 7 to 4, and I run the Fire Prevention Bureau.
Now, you work out of, there's a main location?
Yeah, the fire station on North Milwaukee Avenue, 1551 North Milwaukee Avenue is the headquarters fire station. And that's where my office is out of, that's where the fire chief's out of, and that's where the other assistant chiefs work out of.
Now, these other locations, it's dependent on where the fire is that how it works?
We tried to set the locations up so we could have a response time anywhere within the village or the fire district between 4 and 6 minutes.
Oh,
yeah.
Between 4 and 6 minutes.
Yes.
That's a fast response?
That's our goal. And sometimes it doesn't happen because, either one station's out, so the next station has to cover that call. So it's a longer travel time. But that's the general idea, is 4 to 6 minutes. So.
And I know, do you have a fire pole in yours?
We used to. In the old fire station, we had a fire pole, but when we built the new ones, we didn't include it because the living areas are all on one floor. We did take the pole out of the old fire station and put it in the foyer of the new one, just as a decoration.
Well, I imagine that you have to go through a great deal of training to be fire prepared, to have such a quick response, to get your whole attire on. You have a certain attire you have to wear.
Yes, we do. We actually, it's a standard where we have to be able to get in our gear and put an air pack on in a minute.
In a minute?
A minute.
And you actually go through training and they time it like that?
Yes. That's actually one of the things you go through when you're becoming a firefighter. It's a state standard. The instructors will actually time you, and if you don't do it in that time frame, you have to start all over.
Oh.
So.
Well, that seems like a really hard thing.
It can be.
Well, now I know you work on 24-hour shifts.
The guys on shift, the 13 guys that are on duty a day, they work 24 hours on, they have 48 hours off. So they start today's shift, they start at 7 o'clock this morning, and they don't go home until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Now, is one of them is one delegated to cook, or is it a volunteer thing?
They take turn. They actually rotate. Some shifts actually mark on the calendar who's cooking when. Other shifts just decide, hey, I cook today, you guys can cook tomorrow or the next shift. So, and Sunday when they cook brunch and dinner, they rotate who's doing that too.
Oh, they cook brunch and dinner.
Yes.
How fancy.
Yeah. So we eat good.
Oh, yeah. Well, none of them seem underfed.
So.
We living in Liberty Towers, we see the firemen a lot because we have such. It is a cement building, but there's such sensitive fire alarms, and they said that they wanted it on that basis. That we see the firemen sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. That fire alarm goes off, and I don't want to get myself to be complacent and just ignore it. I try to.
And you shouldn't.
I don't want to get complacent about it. And so, do you have an area that you cover? Now, you said that there's other assistant chiefs besides yourself. That's different shifts or different area?
Different shifts. The gentleman that's working today, he's the assistant chief for today's shift, and we go by color. We go black, red, and gold. So the assistant chief that's working today is in charge of what we call emergency operations, training, fire responses, medical responses. That's his division. So he works 24 hours, and then he goes home tomorrow. Then the other 2 assistant chiefs cover what we call support services, which covers buildings, vehicles, tools, uniforms, stuff like that. And the other gentleman is administrative, human resources, labor negotiations, items like that.
Well, you worked a few years in Gurnee before you came to Libertyville?
Yeah, I started back in 1984 as a volunteer in Gurnee, and I worked there for about 5 years. Then I got hired down in Vernon Township, which is now Lincolnshire Riverwoods. I worked there for just under a year prior to coming to Libertyville.
So. And then since then you've been in Libertyville?
Yes.
And you've been an assistant chief for how long now?
6 years.
6 years. That was since, he was the last one on my show.
Was he?
Yeah.
Bob Kleinheitz?
Yeah.
Yep.
He was the last one on the show. So in the next segment, we're going to go we're going to go into a lot on fire prevention and what to do in case of a fire. But right now, what it's time for is, I call it Vita's Pearls of Wisdom. And, you know, there's a couple things I'd like to talk to you all about. One is, since we have the fire department so much in our building, the biggest thing that happens is that little appliance that we have called the toaster oven. That is the one that causes all these fire alarms, because people put a piece of toast in and they don't watch it. And the minute that it starts getting the toast a little dark, it sends out fumes. And when you have a sensitive fire alarm, if it's any kind of fume or dirt or steam going up, that turns your fire alarm on. So in the toaster oven, you really have to watch that very close. And if you put popcorn in your microwave, and that popcorn, you don't take it out when the popping stops, then that will send out a steam when you open the door, and that will trigger your fire alarm. And another thing you have to watch is you really have to keep your fans free of grease, and you really have to keep your oven free of grease. And you have to really maintain that in order to keep these fire drills down to a minimum. I've had to watch myself because I live in a corner apartment, and so when I cook, I turn my fan on above my stove, and I turn the Hunter fan on in the dining area, and then I also open my window real wide so I have a breeze, or else, because I'm in a corner apartment, apparently I get some sort of draft that it just swoops right up to my smoke alarm and turns it off. Now, I appreciate all the letters and all the suggestions. I've had really good response from you, and I want to give you a reminder to contact me if there's any kind of show, because these shows are designed around what you tell me you want to hear information on. And you can go to our website, and our website is srissues.org, srissues.org. And you could email me there, or you could just email me at vitaverdun at netzero.net. Or if you want to see any of our shows online, what you go to is patch.com, Libertyville, and then you could look up any of the shows, and they're listed by categories. Like this one will be up there in a few weeks, and it will be listed by Libertyville Fire Department. And you could see him, Ken, anytime that you want to. So remember, that's patch.com, Libertyville. And you might want to see there's a little 3-minute little video on what this show is all about. So remember now, keep your ovens clean, and when you're doing anything in the toaster oven, you have to really watch them. Don't walk away, don't take a phone call, because it'll burn that toast. If you put popcorn in the microwave, when the popping stops, you have to take that out right away. And if you watch those little things, you won't have the firemen coming as many times to your apartment, because those are simple little things. And if we follow those simple little things, we make our life easier, and we take a load off the firemen because they're so gracious about it. You know, I feel so guilty when they've showed up at my apartment, because I feel like, oh, this is such a stupid thing on my part. So what we have to do is pay attention. And when we pay attention to these little rules, it'll make it easy on all of us. So let's get back to Ken, and let's get right into now let's see, what should we talk about first? I think we should talk about first what to do in the event of a fire?
Okay. Simplest thing to do is if you live in a single-family house,
Okay.
and there's a fire inside the house, we teach everybody to leave their homes. Okay. Once you're outside, don't go back for anything. Don't go back for pets. Don't go back for telephones. Once you're out, you stay out. If you live in an apartment building like you do, what we tell people is stay in your apartment. Okay. A lot of times it's safer if you stay in your apartment. We can come get you if we, to evacuate you down the safe stairwell. Because a lot of times we come up a certain stairway to use that as what we call our fire attack stairway. So in that hallway is going to be a bunch of firemen, a bunch of hoses, and we don't want the people coming down that stairway. So we have them use a different stairway. So, and the biggest thing is if you leave a house, if there's a fire in your house, once you leave, stay out. We don't want anybody but going back in. That's the biggest thing. So, like what you talked about is when you're cooking, you have to watch what you heat. I was out at the National Fire Academy, which is out in Emmitsburg, Maryland, about 4 years ago, and I learned a saying, watch what you heat, you don't want to invite us to dinner. So basically what you touched on is, stay in the kitchen, watch what you're cooking, because if you don't, there's a good chance that we might show up. So.
Well, the thing that I keep telling myself, and I try to live by it, is I don't answer the phone while I'm cooking because I get too easily distracted.
And
that
you can
happens
forget
to me
that you're cooking and whatever
I
you're
just
cooking.
let it go on the answering service.
Yep.
But I find that in my building, which you're hearing that fire alarm go off a lot, it's due to the toaster oven is the biggest culprit, and the microwave with popcorn. It's such a simple little thing because there's different ranges on different microwaves, so you can't just say like so many minutes because different microwaves work at different frequency levels. And then different types of microwavable popcorn is a different timing.
Yeah, some takes longer, some takes shorter amount of time. And if you get a different bag and you put it in for the same amount of time, there's a good chance you'll burn it.
So what I found, the rule of thumb is the minute you hear the popping go off, take it out, even if they're not all popped, because if you let it go longer, they're going to be burnt and you're going to set your alarm off.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Right. So just simple little things, simple little rules we can follow, and it makes our life easier and it makes the fireman's life easier. Okay, so we've covered that topic. Now let's go into different in-depth on prevention.
Okay. One big thing that I'm a big advocate on is using flameless candles. Flameless candle looks like a real candle, feels like a real candle, smells like a real candle, but it's battery operated. So when you want to use it, you just turn the switch on, it flickers like a real candle, and you can't tell until you actually go up and look at it. Okay, and there's no chance that anything's going to start on fire. A lot of people, they'll light candles, they'll have them up on a table up against like a curtain or up against couches, and that can start a fire. But with these flameless candles, you're not going to have that. So.
Now, I never heard of the flameless candles, but I have what you call a flameless fireplace. And that is, I put a video in, and I put it on a DVD, and it comes up on my television screen. There's different types of flames or different types of candles, and then it plays different types of music.
Kind of relaxing.
Right.
So, yeah, and these candles, you can get them anywhere. You can get them at Walmart, Target, Home Depot, any big box store you can find these candles.
Well, did you hear that now? The flameless candle. This is a new one on me, so I want to repeat that, the flameless candle, because candles start a lot of fires, don't they?
Yes, they do.
People forget to blow them out, or they
forget to blow them out. They'll push them up against something that's flammable, like curtains. If you have pictures on the table, that you push them up against the pictures, you can accidentally knock them over. So.
Then another thing is that people shouldn't store piles of paper in their apartment.
Nah, we've been to apartments where people actually use their ovens to store like old newspapers.
Their ovens?
Yes. And it's not a real good idea, because what they do is they forget to actually have the newspapers in the ovens, then they turn the oven on to use it, and they start a fire that way.
Oh, I'd never heard that before.
It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. Once you're done reading the newspaper, if you don't need it, recycle it. You don't want to accumulate any garbage inside your apartment. You want to keep the area around your hot water heater, if you have one, free of any debris, any garbage, any storage. That way,
around the hot water
hot
heater?
water heater and furnace, you always want to keep those areas clear. So
because they ignite?
well, there is a flame on the bottom of the water heater.
Oh, there is.
So if you get stuff too close to that, there's a chance of igniting, especially if you're missing the cover over the flame.
Oh, well, I live in an electric building, so it would still, but it still would be hot.
Yeah. So the best idea is just keep that area clear.
Well, what is the most area that you go out for? Is it papers or what is it for fires?
Fires, it varies. If you read the statistics, cooking is the main cause of fires.
Cooking.
You have cooking, you have smoking, you have candles, you have electrical issues.
There's still a lot of people that smoke, I know. And that's smoking in bed?
Smoking in bed, improperly discarded cigarette butts. If you throw them into like a mulch pile, that can start a small fire. If you throw them into a garbage can and leave your garbage can inside your house, that can start a fire. We suggest that if you are going to smoke, you want to use a deep, sturdy ashtray. Put your cigarette butts out, and before you throw them in the garbage, you want to make sure you soak them in water and make sure they're completely out.
How about fireplaces?
Fireplaces, you want to make sure that you get your chimney cleaned every year, especially if you use it a lot. You don't want all that soot and creosote building up in the chimney, because that can actually start a fire. And you only want to use dry, hardened, seasoned firewood. And if you're going to use a Duraflame log, one of those prefab logs, you only want to use one, because those can put out just as much heat as, I want to say it's 8 logs, 8 regular pieces of firewood. So if you have more than one Duraflame log in your fireplace, it's going to burn really hot. So
I think one of the things I wanted to mention that you mentioned before the show is that your father was a fireman.
Yes, he was. He was actually a captain in Gurnee. He also he was the fire marshal, so he ran the Fire Prevention Bureau, kind of like what I'm doing. And he was there. So
you were born into this. This was in your blood.
So actually, and before I took over the bureau, I called him up and asked for his opinion, see if I should take it. So yeah, I kind of followed in his footsteps. He retired probably about 10 years ago. So he's enjoying retirement. He moved to Tennessee, so so he's happy.
Oh, well, that's so nice that that's in your blood. This is a question that I ask everybody. What kind of satisfaction do you get, because you started very young at this, and what kind of gratification do you get back in the type of work that you're doing?
It's probably going to sound cliche, but it's knowing that I'm helping somebody. Whether I help save a life, whether I help prevent a fire. Those are the things I do this for. I don't do it for the money. I don't do it to be a hero. This is what I wanted to do since I was a little kid. So just the knowing that I help somebody is enough for me.
That's in your genes.
Yep.
Because I kind of fashioned the same question, and no matter what the profession is, I find this so interesting. They say that they get something back. It's a form of helping. It's giving out, and that's such a good thing. And we're so blessed to have you as the assistant fire chief in the community, to know that we're taken care of so good. Because the firemen, to me, are like unsung heroes of the day.
Yep. You call us on your worst day.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times you'll drive by the fire station, see all the doors closed up, and you really don't know what's going on there. But, we're training, we're practicing, we're trying to get better at what we do. So when you do call us, we do a really good job.
Now, what have you learned over this last 28 years that you would say is the biggest preventative measure people can take?
Common sense. Just use common sense when you're doing stuff. Like when you're cooking, stay in the kitchen, don't walk away. If you smoke, make sure you put the cigarette butts out. Make sure you put your cigarettes out, and just do things safely.
Do you see a lot of grease fires from cooking?
Not in the past couple of years we haven't. You know, coming to where you live, Liberty Towers, you know, they're not fires, but, you know, when people are cooking, the smoke from the grease can set off the smoke detectors also. So.
Yeah, and we should mention that any kind of, what sets off the fire alarm? It's steam?
Many things can set off smoke detectors. Smoke is the main thing that we're going for, but you have steam, you have dirt, you have dust, you have spiders. If bugs can get in there, they can set them off. So there's a whole gamut of things.
Now, what do you recommend? How often should these fire alarms be changed, new batteries?
We recommend it in a battery-operated smoke detector that most people have in their homes. Change the batteries twice a year. Simplest or the easiest way to remember is when you change the clock, change the batteries. And we also recommend that if your smoke detector is over 10 years old, that you replace it.
Replace it completely.
Replace it completely. A lot of times is you can go to a big box store, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's, and you can buy a battery-operated smoke detector. But if you live in a building that has hardwired smoke detectors, then it's going to be up to the building management company to get those detectors changed.
Right. Another question I have, like if you live in an apartment building, are you supposed to keep your doors closed?
Yes.
Your doors closed and your windows closed?
During a fire, or?
Like if there's a fire happen.
Yeah, if the fire happens in your apartment, you always want to close your door, because that will keep the fire concentrated in that unit and won't spread. Most apartment buildings on the doors have self-closers, so when you leave, the door closes, and those are supposed to stay on there. Or if your apartment's on the affected floor, let's say you have a fire 3 apartments down, and we tell you to leave, make sure you close your door.
Well, one thing I learned today is people should never keep their old papers stored in their oven, right?
No.
You know, so hopefully, you know, everybody who's watching this has picked up some tips like I have. And you know what time it is now? When you out there come to the end of your rope, you tie a knot and you hang on. And you hang on real tight. You know why? Because the best is yet to come. What we want y'all to do this week is catch the spirit.